So good afternoon and thanks for joining us. My name is Betty Kwan and I'm on the marketing team here at ProServeIT. Presenting today will be George Abu Samra, Principal Consultant and Security Practice Lead at ProServeIT. It's our pleasure to host you today. Before we launch into the presentation, I'd just like to mention a few housekeeping items. I would ask that you please keep yourself on mute during the presentation portion, but feel free to ask any questions by typing them in the chat. We'll answer your questions during a pause or during our Q&A time. We will be recording the presentation and you will all receive a copy for your reference. Look out for an email from me in about a day or two. If you experience any audio or visual issues, we suggest you drop from the session and join again. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to George.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Betty. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the sixth and final webinar of this Cybersecurity Framework series as we talk about how to protect your overall security posture. My name is George Abusamra, Principal Consultant and Security Practice Lead here at ProServeIT. And today we'll be talking about what you need to know to protect your overall security posture with Microsoft technologies. All right, so during today's session, we'll be talking about how to deal with security, specifically in your Microsoft 365 tenant. So to start, I'll be providing you some challenges that organizations face today with security. Then we'll talk about how to simplify security using a three-step approach. We'll then go through a quick demo of some of the Microsoft Sentinel as a solution that can monitor your overall security. We'll then talk about what next steps look like for your organization. And finally, we'll go through a Q&A session to answer any questions that you might have. All right, so today, organizations are faced with an incredible difficult task of trying to protect their expanding digital estate from increasing cyber threats. Now, the move to the cloud and a more mobile workforce, especially when expedited throughout COVID, has pushed the border of your state beyond the boundary of your physical network. Your data, your users, and your systems are everywhere today. So more cloud-based applications are being used. Users working from anywhere in the world are not tied down to their office space to be productive. Information sharing and possibly sensitive information sharing with customers and partners through these cloud-based models have increased as well. The point being, we're more of a modern IT era, and we can't rely on our firewalls anymore to help protect us. So the security operations purpose of protecting an organization's information and assets is becoming increasingly difficult. Some of those reasons are shown here on the screen. One of which is that attack techniques, their frequency, their complexity are evolving extremely fast. A typical attack can span different parts and cross various resource types. It might start from an email address, proceed to an endpoint, spread to a cloud service or to a database, and involve multiple user accounts. Another challenge worth noting is that security teams are under strain from the expanding range of defensive technologies and not knowing what security tools they need as hybrid adoption increases. So this can cause alert fatigue, where we see too many alerts from all these disconnected products. You need a way to reduce that noise. You have to prioritize these alerts and enable investigation and hunting across your entire data set, because limiting it to only a specific data set is just not going to be enough. Breach investigations are complex and also time consuming. When there's a security breach, every second counts, and security personnel are handling a threat that might jeopardize their organization. The clock is ticking fast, but investigation requires highly skilled security analysts and can often take days or weeks. And to add to that, the shortage of security talent makes this problem even worse. And the need for skilled security professionals has greatly increased with time. And supply cannot meet current or future demand. These are just some of the challenges that organizations face today when dealing with security. So what does the three-step approach to security look like? Security by any means is not simple at all, but we're going to try to simplify this into a three-step approach. So one thing worth mentioning here is that security is a journey. It's not a one and done deal, and nobody can guarantee 100% that you won't get breached or compromised, even if you've invested in a hefty amount of tools and services. But what we can do is make it extremely difficult for hackers to get in. That, they see that it's difficult, they'll leave you alone and move on to another victim. Now, research has shown that if hackers detect advanced security tools like MFA, for example, or multi-factor authentication, it would give them a hard time to break in. They would stop wasting their time and move on to another victim. Now, obviously, it depends on whether you're a targeted organization or just a random victim, but at the end of the day, you want to make it as hard as possible for hackers to get in. The first part of the journey is to assess the environment. We want to be able to identify security gaps and areas of improvement within your environment. You have to be able to understand the risks involved with each identified gap so you can make an informed decision on what to do with that risk. Do you want to mitigate it? Do you want to accept it? Or do you want to transfer it to a third party? Now, gaps could be a process change, it could be documentation, implementation and already tools that you've already invested in, as per best practices, or even introducing new tools to protect your environment. Now, part of the assessment includes a holistic security questionnaire pertaining to all aspects of security. Another part of the assessment would be a security profiling exercise to help determine your organization's current maturity level and the level of importance or your desired state that you should be in. And finally, a cursory cloud audit of what security measures have been deployed and whether they have been deployed against best practices or not. This will help us create a security roadmap based on these identified risks. Now, once we assess the environment, we want to be able to protect it. And Microsoft has a wide range of security tools that can help organizations protect themselves against these risks, whether it's related to your identity, your access management, your data, your email, your endpoint security, your application security, so on and so forth. Once we protect it, then we want to be able to monitor our environment and create alerting whenever malicious activities are witnessed. Whether they are unsuccessful attempts or not, internal or external activities, regardless of what's being done, we want to be able to monitor these activities and be alerted for us to be able to investigate what's happening and act as quickly as possible. So with the help of a security operations center, like ProServeIT's Alarm Guardian offering, we have the ability to monitor the environment using Microsoft Sentinel as the SIM and source solution 24 by 7 by 365. Now, this three-step approach can also be viewed as a cycle. So every time changes happen within your environment, maybe it's adding a new service, new server, new application. Every time you want to add a new service or a new application or a new server, you want to assess that application to ensure that it's secure. And if there were gaps that were identified, you should find ways to protect or mitigate those gaps. And finally, add it to your monitoring solution to ensure compliance. So with that said, these are some of the examples that ProServeIT is able to help with, regards to the three-phase approach to security. There are many available assessments to choose from that can help you identify your risks, whether that's an Office 365 assessment, an Azure assessment, on-premises assessment for your servers, your workstations, a penetration test, vulnerability assessment, so on and so forth. The outcome of these assessments are typically documentation detailing the risks and gaps identified and the recommendations on how to close those gaps and improve your security posture. Now, some of these assessments will have a security roadmap as an output that we can use to help you throughout your security journey as well. And like I stated earlier, Microsoft has a wide range of tools that can help protect the environment. Now, based on the gaps identified, we can correlate them with a specific tool or implement a specific process, documentation, end user training, end user awareness, so on and so forth. So for example, if an identity was an issue and you don't have multi-factor authentication implemented, that will be the number one recommendation on our report because it blocks 99.9% of attacks against your identity. So any type of entryway into your environment, whether it's cloud-based, whether it's through your VPN, regardless of how you enter to access a server or service in your environment, we want to be able to ensure that MFA is enabled or multi-factor authentication is enabled, and it provides the extra layer of security in case your account does get compromised. Another example is email. A lot of organizations get spoofed today. If you don't have the proper spoofing protection with SPF, DKIM, and DMARC records, anybody can pretty much send an email pretending to be you, impersonating your organization. And we want to make sure that all that is taken care of and all those gaps are closed before any gaps are used or attacked. And finally, we want to use a security monitoring solution like Microsoft Sentinel. And if you have the expertise or in-house power to manage a SIM source solution tool. Otherwise, you can outsource it to a managed security provider like ProServeIT, and we'll be able to monitor, detect, and respond to threats on behalf of your organization. So what is Microsoft Sentinel? Microsoft Sentinel is a scalable, cloud-native security information and event management, or SIM for short, and security orchestration, automation, and response, or SOAR for short. So it's a solution provided by Microsoft. The SIM component allows us to analyze event data in real time for early detection of targeted attacks and data breaches. It also allows us to collect and
Okay, we'll be right back, folks, as George puts his screen back up.
apologies. I'm not sure why Teams is acting up. All right, so as I was saying, it allows us to collect, store, and investigate on log data for incident response, forensics, and regulatory compliance if you have to retain your logs for some sort of regulatory body. The SOAR components helps us just make the jump from just simply collecting the security related data to streamlining security operations by using something we call playbooks. And these playbooks allow us to automate the tasks that are required to respond to security events. Those tasks could be, somebody signed in from another country that I'm not typically in. You want to make sure to reset that person's password, revoke their access, reset their password, so on and so forth, all that in an automated fashion. So Microsoft works by correlating the security logs and signals from all your sources, from your applications to your servers, to your infrastructure, networks, users, regardless of where they are. They're on premises, in Azure, or any other cloud platform. And eventually, we want it to alert us whenever anomalies arise in the events that are detected. So this end-to-end solution for security operations can be broken down into four main phases: collect, detect, investigate, and respond. So as part of the collect phase, you want to be able to collect logs and data from various sources, such as Office 365, Azure, servers, firewalls, workstations, so on and so forth. Typically an organization will want to monitor their sensitive information, their documents, their servers. All that has to be included as part of this solution. So as of today, there's over 123 different connectors and growing, regardless of whether it's Microsoft related or third-party related. And even if it's your own custom built application, there are ways for us to ingest those logs and alert us whenever anomalies arise within that application as well. Once we decide what information we want to collect, we want to be able to detect any type of security incident with the analytic rules that we create. So for example, I want to generate an alert when someone successfully signs into my account from any country outside of Canada. I'll create that analytic rule. I'll have it scan the logs, let's just say every 5 minutes or so, and then it'll create an alert anytime someone successfully signs into my account from outside of Canada. If it's not me, I want people to know that somebody would have compromised my account, or is this me signing in from a VPN or other use cases? But at least I want it to generate an alert for someone to start the investigation process, which is my next phase. It's the investigate phase. We want to be able to investigate the alert and find the root cause in a short period of time. To do that, we have to understand the scope of the incident, and we have to be able to find the root cause of a potential security threat. And Sentinel helps us do that investigation process throughout the solution itself. And once we've completed our investigation, we want to be able to respond as quickly as possible to eliminate the threat using automation whenever possible. So, this is where the previous example where I gave that you can reset the person's password, you can revoke their access, you can block their account. All that can be done using playbooks. You can block an IP address on your firewall, block an IP address in Azure on your server. depends on what we're trying to protect, where the attack was. We can create some sort of playbook or automation workflow that can kind of mitigate that attack in a quick manner. So the hacker is in your environment for a limited period of time before they're kicked out again. With that said, let's move on to a quick demo of Sentinel, and then we'll come back to this presentation. All right, so this is what Microsoft Sentinel looks like. This is just an overview page. It gives us some insight on what data we can see within all these tabs here. So right now we're only limiting it to the last 24 hours, but we can definitely increase the logs or increase the view to more than that, to 30 days, for example. And then we can see all the amount of logs ingested into this platform from the various tools, whether it's sign-in activity, threat intelligence logs, Office 365 activity, Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, or others, possibly firewall logs, server logs, so on and so forth. All right, so just based on this overview data, we can go into our data connectors as part of the first phase. We want to be able to collect as many logs as possible from the resources or the services that we want to monitor. Like I said, regardless of whether it's Microsoft related or third party, we'll have one way or another for us to be able to ingest those logs and be able to monitor them as well. So just for the sake of time, I'm just gonna show you a quick Office 365 integration. It's as simple as clicking on the log or clicking on the connector name, opening up the connector page. Every single one of those connectors, whether it's third party or not, you would have prerequisites. What are you required to have prior to enabling this connector and start ingesting the logs? And list of steps of what you need to do for your firewall, for example, in order to start ingesting those logs, or your VMware environment, or your servers. All that will be provided to you in a step-by-step fashion by Microsoft and by the vendor themselves. So for Office 365, it's just a matter of checking the boxes, clicking apply changes, and then within a few hours, you're going to start receiving logs from Office 365. Once those logs are in your environment, you want to create your analytic rules. So what do you want to monitor within Office 365? What type of activities? Is it whenever somebody shares a specific type of file from SharePoint? Maybe you want to monitor the keyword password. Somebody shared a file called password from SharePoint, and you can create that analytic rule, set the severity to high, medium, or low, and have it trigger an incident anytime that specific activity happens. So if I was to take a look at, there's three tickets on the board or three incidents on the board, we can see this is hack tools detected. There's unusual addition of credentials to an OAuth app happening by this entity. These are the IP addresses in question. There's a suspicious file extension that is being used. In this case, it's a PS1 file, as you can see here in the detail. So there's some PowerShell script files being shared in OneDrive or being accessed in OneDrive or SharePoint. In this case, it is SharePoint. So it's just pretty much having all this ammo for us to be able to investigate what is happening and provide us the best ability to perform whatever actions we need to perform after the fact. So if we were to take this incident as an example, and there's an IP address, I just want to show you a quick example of what kind of playbooks we can use. So I want to determine whether this IP address is malicious or not, because somehow, some way, it is using or it's accessing a PS1 file, a SharePoint, a script, a PowerShell script file. So
George, just a quick time check.
perfect, thank you, Betty. So let's just do. I'm going to run these two playbooks here. So I'm going to check the IP address against abuse IPDB and virus total. I'm going to go back to the incident. As you can see here, there's no comments. But as soon as I refresh, now I got 2 comments. It's going to check that IP, and all this was done in literally seconds, to tell me whether this IP has been reported as malicious, is it harmless, is it suspicious, so on and so forth, to be able to make an informed decision of whether this is a valid IP or it's been used by somebody out there for malicious intent. This is just one example or a couple of examples of playbooks that we can use, but eventually, let's just say this was a malicious IP, malicious content. I can run another playbook that would reset this user's password, block their account, revoke their access to kick the hacker out, and all done within seconds as well. All right, let's move back to the presentation here. So what do next steps look like? First thing is to assess your environment for risks and security gaps, whether it's related to Office 365, Azure, on-premises, penetration testing, phishing campaigns, so on and so forth. You want to start off knowing where your gaps and risks are to help mitigate them and eventually reduce the risk as much as possible. So ProServeIT offers a wide range of security assessments that can help identify these gaps. If you're interested in hearing and understanding more about these assessments, you can reach out to us at cloud@proserveit.com and we'll provide you with as much information as possible. Now, there are also multiple Microsoft funded security workshops that your organization can qualify for. Some of these are, they can help you identify your risks, threats, and gaps. And they're typically designed to help your organization, your IT team, and your executives better understand how Microsoft can help accelerate your security journey. The workshops that are currently available are Securing Your Identities, your Threat Protection Workshop, Sensitive Data Workshop, Manage and Investigate Risk, and Microsoft Sentinel. So reach out to us at cloud@proserveit.com and mention this webinar so that we can give you more information about these funded workshops and whether your organization qualifies or not. In addition to that, ProServeIT's Security Operations Center offering that is built around Microsoft Sentinel is called Alarm Guardian. So you can think about this offering as getting security for your home. But instead of protecting your home and monitoring your home, we'll be protecting your IT environment. It could be your Office 365, your Azure servers, workstations, firewalls, so on and so forth. Now, by signing up for Alarm Guardian, ProServeIT will be able to keep an eye on your environment from security risks 24/7. Now, there are different tiers that you can choose from just based on your organization. We can either deploy it for your organization and you can manage it yourself as a standalone deployment, or we can manage security on your behalf with our Security Operations Center as a managed services offering. So again, if you're interested in exploring this offer further, reach out to us at cloud@proserveit.com and mention this webinar to get more information about our Microsoft Sentinel deployment. Now, these are some of the security problems our Alarm Guardian offer solves. All the challenges organizations currently face with security and more. So we have a team of experienced security analysts that monitor, detect, and respond to security threats on your behalf in a timely manner. Just one thing that you have to keep in mind is that anybody could be a victim of cybercrime. It's a matter of when they get hit and not if they get hit. And we're seeing a lot of both targeted and non-targeted attacks. So it doesn't really matter what your business is or how many employees you have. If you have an exposed vulnerability, it will be used and abused. And again, this message is for all organizations, regardless of your size, function, type, or business. And depending on how complex your environment is, we have multiple packages that could fit your need. So whether you're a small and medium business with less than 100 employees, or you're an enterprise organization with thousands of employees, there's a package that would fit your organization. So I hope I raised some awareness here today about security. And remember, security doesn't sleep, so you have to make sure you're protected by 24/7 by 365. And now for some Q&A.
While we're waiting for a question, George, maybe you'd like to talk about what happens if there's an internal custom application?
Yeah, definitely. So, if customers have built their own custom application, whether it's a web application or, a thick layered application, there are ways for us to be able to monitor that application. So as long as it spits out logs somewhere, there's a file that has logs, maybe activities happening within the application, maybe login activity. As long as there's logs somewhere, there will be one way or another for us to be able to pull those logs out, ingest them into Sentinel, and finally run our queries or run our analytic rules against them to check for any malicious activities happening within that application itself. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, uh, you know, something vendor-based that you purchased or that you've signed up for. Even if it's custom built in-house and it has logs, there will be one way or another for us to ingest those logs into Sentinel and monitor on your behalf as well.
Thanks, George. I just want to mention to everybody that I put some links into the chat, and you can have a look at some of those. I will also be sending out an email with the recording of this session, and the links will be attached there as well. So feel free to look at those links. George, maybe you can talk about what assessment might be the best to start off with.
Yeah, definitely. So it really depends on your organization. So, if you're just only in Office 365 using Office 365, then that might be the best use case scenario. So we'll assess your Office 365 environment, your Exchange Online, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, whether you've deployed everything as per best practices or whether maybe you're not fully utilizing your licenses to the best of their abilities. You've already invested in some sort of security features, but it's just a checkbox that you haven't turned on, or some quick wins that can fully improve your security posture. So it really depends on what your organization has, and we can kind of take it from there. If you've invested in Azure, you've deployed servers, services in Azure, SaaS, PaaS, we'll be able to assess those, give you our recommendations, and again, there might be some quick wins that you can implement fairly quickly in a short period of time that can improve your security posture significantly. Or there could be a little more advanced security features that we kind of have to deep dive into and explain the risks. And once you understand the risks, then you can make an informed decision on what next steps would look like.